Microsoft Excel 2003, using lists. Now, I know a lot of people don't get too excited about lists because you have a list of this to do and list of that to do. But in Excel, lists are tools that we can use to enhance our ability to analyze data. In Excel 2003, lists have been kicked up a notch, kind of like, Emeril Lagasse, where let's kick it up a notch. Bam, let's put a list in here. A list can be used to now analyze data, which we'll show you how to do first, and then we'll also see some of the lists that we're familiar with, like custom lists that allow us to use autofill and fill in things, and that is really going to enable us to analyze and customize our Excel even better. I know when I first got started with Excel back in the day, and eventually they added this thing called list functionality. And at first I was kind of like, well, what's the big deal with lists? I mean, it just you can highlight data and then kind of separate it from a range of data, and then that sets it off from the rest of the worksheet. But what does that actually do for me? Well, just like when you go shopping to a store and you need a list to kind of help you keep track of everything, it's a tool, right? Well, that's what lists are. They are tools that allow us to designate a portion of an Excel worksheet, a discrete portion, and then we can filter, we can sort, we can print, we can publish to a SharePoint site. We can do all the things that we want to do with these lists, and it won't affect the rest of the worksheet. So let's go ahead and open up our sales figures list, one of our example piles, and we can see something fairly similar to what we've seen previously. We got all our sales information here, and when things were sold, and there's Bob, Dan, James, Christina, and Debbie. We're all back here together, and I've added some more data over here for Q1 sales. So this is quarter 2. We've got April, May, and June. This is our first quarter sales. So I've got 2 separate areas here on my worksheet. And let's say I wanted to go and do some filtering over here on this particular data. Now, the old way that we could do filtering is I'd select somewhere over here, and remember, I'd come up to Data, and I'd click Filter, and I'd do Auto Filter, and it would select this area, and then I could do the things I wanted to do, where I can say I just want to see, the month of April or something like that. I have these choices here, and we've seen how to do that. That's a fairly simple procedure. But let me go ahead and show you this. We can also take all of this sales information, and then it gives me sum information down here, and I could hit the auto sum, and it would give me my number. Of course, my my number's too big to view. That's what all the little tic-tac-toe marks there are for, the pound symbols. So I can do all of that in a standard range, but watch what happens when I decide to do it in a list. I'm going to go ahead and undo my auto sum, and I'm going to click over here and turn off my filtering, auto filter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of this data, and I want to create all of this and put it into a list. Not a problem. I can go ahead and do that by clicking on Data and List and create a list. Here's one option. Or if I want to, I can merely come over here and select, right-click, and do Create List. It's one of my right-click options. So you have it either way. So let's go ahead and do it this way. And it comes up and it says, okay, where is the data for your list? Now, I already highlighted a range, so it already automatically assumes that's what I want to do, and it inputs it. Notice it uses absolutes here because I'm creating a list. And I also tell it my list has headers. It looked and said, oh, you know what, I noticed you have some bold titles up here. I bet you have headers. I can say, no, I don't. But in this case, I do, and you're going to see why. I click OK, and now I get myself a new toolbar. Look at that, the list toolbar. And all the functions that I can think of that I was doing normally, like auto filter. Notice it automatically turned on auto filter. I have my auto filter capabilities. I have my toggle. I can insert a total row and put some information down there. I can decide to use the chart wizard. I can do many different things if necessary just by using this. Now when I select off of it, you're going to notice that something has changed. I have this blue line that goes around all of the information that I have in my list. And notice I missed a certain part. I missed one of the pieces that I wanted. Oh no, what am I going to do now? Well, it's a good thing that Excel allows us to fix our boo-boos, right? Well, what we can do is come over here and I can wand over with my mouse and it changes my cursor here to the arrows to say, yeah, you can resize this. So I come down here and I select this row as well. And it says, all right, no problem. You have now gone ahead and resized and added. Let me click off here. I've now added this row as part of my list. It's all now contained as part of my list. So what can we do with these lists? Well, remember, if I click anywhere in here, I get my list menu, and this list menu allows me to do many things. One thing we can see it automatically gives us is the auto filter functionality. So in this case, I can come up here to month and say I want to only look at April. No problem, I can do that. Or I can look at June. Or I can look at May. These are all things that I was able to do beforehand, right? I could go in, I could choose whatever, thing I wanted to look at. In fact, I want to see, instead of looking at April, I can, in May and June, I can look at only Bob's sales, how much sales Bob's has. Now, this is good. Now, what else can I do with these lists? Well, I can also, notice this, it says I can do a toggle total row. Now, when I turn on the total row, it will go ahead and it will start doing some automatic totaling for me. But what if I wanted to be able to total how many sales per region or how many types he used? I can do that by coming over here and merely selecting anywhere in the total row and changing the functionality. Right now it does a count. I can do an average, which is, hey, you can't do that. But, I can change whatever it is for me. In this case, count works. I can say that there's 4 of these here. If I wanted to find out what the average sales were for Bob throughout this quarter, I can then click down here and click average and say, well, you averaged about $2,811.25. See what I'm doing? The same functionality that I had when I had my data, only now it's all located into one convenient location. Now, while I was doing this, you might say, well, okay, that's cool, Chris. You can do this. And by the way, I can turn it off too. I can just say, no, I don't want any. I don't want to do the count. I can say none. Or I can say, what is the total here and change the values, whatever it is. The total row, I can then turn off. I can just say, nope, no row there. Also, with lists, all of the data that I'm doing is discrete. In other words, it's really not, even though it's showing the different rows over here for the Q1 sales, it's not really affecting anything that's going on. It's just the way that I view it. Watch what happens. I'm going to select in here, and let's go ahead and just expand it all the way out so we can see. What if I just want it to only affect here, and I just don't want anything to happen to this list, or I want to do something separate? I can have multiple lists. Watch this. I scroll on over here. I select Q1 sales, I bring it all over down here, and I right-click, and I say Create List. And it says, you bet, is this what you want to do? My list has headers. The same thing that I saw over here with creating this list, I can do as well. I click OK, and watch this. I have 2 separate lists. Here's list 2, the second one I did, and here's list 1. 2 different lists that we have here. And again, my auto filter capabilities turn on. And watch what happens when I auto filter over here now. If I say Q1 sales, I only want to see January. So I can see only the January sales over here, and and it's great. And I'm filtering down what I need to see, right? Same thing that I have. Now watch what happens though when I want to change the rows. Let's say over here on this list, I decide to insert a row. It's one of the options that I have here. So I'm going to bring this over here, and I'm going to say I want to be able to add a row. So let me actually bring it here so you can see it a little bit better. So I click List, and I say Insert, and I click Row. Now see what happens? I've now inserted a row 6 here, but it hasn't done anything over here to my other list. It doesn't affect it. It's saying, hey, look, this is its own little separate arena here. I've inserted more material. I'm doing something different. It is all happening over here on this side, on this list. So now that we've created these list areas that we can then do the same functionality that we've seen before, the auto sums, the filtering, publishing to a SharePoint, wherever we need to do. All of this information is great. But what about some of the other lists? We promised to show you another one, and one of them is the autofill list. You can create custom lists in order to fill in when you hit the autofill without having to type. So first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and get rid of this. I'm going to delete this row. And again, watch as it doesn't affect anybody else. And let's click over here. And I'm going to decide, what if if I want to do autofill, I can do things like this. I can type in January, and then I can click on the autofill. You can see the little cross, and it'll go February, March, April, and it'll automatically fill in a list if you want. Or I can also say not a series, but I can also do just copy the cells. What if I wanted to create a separate list, a custom one for this? Let's scroll over here, and let's say I wanted to create one where if I type in first quarter, I could then use the autofill capability to not just copy it, but actually do a list of, where it says second quarter. And then you come down here and it would say third quarter. And then the final one would, of course, be, because there's only 4 quarters, fourth quarter. Now, typing that took a little bit of time. I mean, it wasn't horrendous. But if you have big, huge lists of maybe sales numbers, badge numbers, things like that you want to do, you can do customized lists. It's not a problem. So what I can do is come over here and say Tools, Options, and then under some of the options, which I have very many, and we'll look at some of these later on in the series when we do customization of our Excel spreadsheet, Custom Lists. When I click on Custom Lists, I can see here that I can create a new list, or here are the ones that I have already: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, in abbreviated format, full format. Same thing with the date, the months of the year, January, February. We saw that. I did January, February. This list is in place, and so when I do the autofill, it will automatically go, oh, you want to do this. Now, I can create the new list by coming in and typing in the list entries here by saying first quarter. I then separate it by a comma, so it knows that that's the first one. Then I can say second quarter, and then I can do third quarter, and then I can do fourth quarter. So I'm creating this new list entry. Okay, first, second, third quarter. Make sure the commas are where they need to be, and I click Add. And it says, oh, here you go. So here's your list entries. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. Make sure it's spelled correctly. Have you ever done that where you look at something and go, boy, did I spell quarter right? Yes, I did. So we have our first through fourth quarters. Now when I click OK, I now have that as an available list. So if I wanted to, I can come over here now and I type in first quarter. And then when I grab my autofill, it's going to say, oh, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. See, it's going to build the list just like I did in my custom list building. So lists overall are cool things. They are tools that help us when we are developing our spreadsheets as well as analyzing our spreadsheets. Well, in this video, we took a look at how lists are our friends. They're great tools that we can have and utilize for analyzing data separate from the rest of the worksheet or the Excel workbook there. In fact, we can create many different lists, and that way we're not affecting all the other areas as well, and do all kinds of things that we're used to. Then we saw that we can use custom lists to create custom lists of whether it's the dates, or whether we put something in like the days of the week and we use that autofill. Well, we can create custom ones for whatever type of big long list that we want without having to type it in. We can use autofill with it. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.